Guys, we're on a McCarthy kick right now. Cormac McCarthy was probably my introduction, the thing that first got me into literature in general and reading. Blood Meridian, and this is the guy that got me into it. Is my brother, and he, I thought I was making fun of him because he was obsessed with the book, and I thought that it was. When you're brothers and you're around each other all the time, anytime your brother is into anything and you're not, you got to make fun of him for it. But then I read Cormac McCarthy and Blood Meridian, and I realized what I was missing out on, and that kicked off my entire reading journey, really. But we're talking about No Country for Old Men, which was adapted into a film by the Coen brothers, and you've probably seen it. It's a great movie. It's very faithful to the book. If you've seen the book or read the book, it is a excellent book, and it's very similar to the movie with things added to it. But just go through the basic broad strokes of what happens in the book. It's about a cartel deal that goes wrong in Texas someplace, and it's about a cartel deal that goes wrong. Everybody dies in the cartel shootout, and what is Llewellyn's official job in the book?
He's a welder.
Yeah, right.
He's a hunting hobbyist and works as a welder. You never see him work as a welder. He just goes out hunting, stumbles upon the aftermath of the cartel shootout, sees the drugs, the wreckage, and stumbles upon an enormous sum of cash. And just prefacing the rest of this video, it's going to be a spitting ASMR. I'm spitting on his feet right now. So
On my bare feet.
just if you don't like spitting sounds, that's too bad if you really want to listen to it. But he finds the cash, and from there on, it fundamentally changes the course of the rest of his life.
Yeah, he finds the money and makes off with the cash. For anybody that's seen the movie, we're preaching to the choir, but we're just going through it anyways. And sorry about the wind noises, but we're just going for it. Okay. So he finds the cash. He makes off with the cash, but of course, the cash is bugged. It has a tracking device on it, and he's unaware of this fact. But there is two forces looking for him at this point, which would be the cartel itself, as well as whoever was making the deal with the cartel.
Reaganomics businessman.
Yes, some official business gentlemen that have probably connections to the CIA, let's just say. Okay, I don't want to get too into conspiracy zone, but let's just say it probably had some devious connections with the U.S. government. I don't know that. That's just a theory of mine.
They also hired multiple people from the Vietnam War, different like contractors, ex-military and whatnot. So
right,
you could read into that if you wanted to.
Yeah, like what's his name in the movie? What's the actor's name?
Woody Harrelson.
Woody Harrelson's character, I forget his name. Yeah, he was confirmed a Vietnam vet.
Yeah.
And the main antagonist, Anton Chigurh, who is contracted from this. I'm just gonna call them a government group, but they're official. Let's say they're businessmen. So the businessmen hire Anton to take care of to find this package full of money, because there's millions of dollars in cash in a little briefcase. So the cartel deal goes wrong, everybody dies, and they're missing the money. So there's two sides after him. There's the ones that were bringing the money to give to the cartel, and there's the cartel. So Anton shows up on the scene after Llewellyn has made off with the cash, and he shows up with two. What are they? Are they
representatives from the company?
Yeah, representatives from the company. And this was one thing that was a little unclear to me was who these people work for. Like, do they work for the guy that? Because he ends up killing a guy from this official business company later on.
But he also kills the two guys that went out with him because they suggest we need to get some more men on this, and that's Sugar's like, no, you picked the right tool for the job, which is him. So he kills them and he goes off and does whatever. Yeah, exactly what kind of company this is. It's sort of the missing floor that's brought up later in the book and in the movie.
Yeah,
there's some symbols in there,
which is something that I'm not sure that I understand what's going on with the missing floor, but anyway, so Anton Chigurh is sort of an elemental force of nature, of evil that runs under the radar within American society, and he has no morals. He has no moral valence whatsoever. He is a killing machine. He wields a what is it? It's like a pneumatic. I believe it's called a captive bolt gun, which is a tool for killing cattle, for killing steer, which is also briefly referenced by the sheriff, which we haven't introduced yet, but Sheriff Bell.
Yeah.
Sheriff Bell, which is represented in the movie by goddamn, what's his name?
Now that you say it, I can't. Tommy Lee Jones.
Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah.
So Tommy Lee Jones's character brings up later on that he's trying to comfort Llewellyn's wife, because Llewellyn has gone missing at this point. He's made off with the cash, and he knows that they can't involve his wife within this basically get rich quick circumstance that he's run into, which, by the way, he ran into when he was hunting. He just stumbled upon this money, and he's a smart guy. He was also in Vietnam, so he has some ideas.
It's also heavily implied. I think Woody Harrelson's character actually mentions that he served with Chigurh.
That's probably how he knows him.
Yeah, that's like how he's worked with him, at least through that. I think some other...
Which would explain some of his medical experience as well.
Yeah.
If you guys remember in the movie when he's treating himself after the gunshot wound. But...
So it's a three-way story between the Andy Griffith-esque sheriff caught in the middle of this new age criminal escapade of an ordinary-ish man, like the type of guy you'd meet at a rodeo that's trying to pick up 16-year-old girls, which is Llewellyn. And Andy Griffith trying to deal with this in the middle of a business corporation cartel standoff, all trying to go for Llewellyn. So he's kind of caught between three entities and just trying to survive.
And the movie is extremely faithful to the book, but there are plot details that are edited out of the book for sake of convenience to the movie going experience, which would probably be like, for instance, the redhead. If any of you remember the redhead that asks Llewellyn to come have a beer with him at the pool. She, in the story, I believe, is she's a 15-year-old girl.
She's a hitchhiker.
That was a hitchhiker that he picks up off the road when he's on the run. And there's multiple chapters dedicated to this sort of dynamic between Llewellyn and this girl.
It's weird how it parallels his marriage to Carla Jean in a lot of ways, because again, Llewellyn meets Carla Jean when she is underage, 16 years old, just like the hitchhiker girl, working at Walmart or something like that, hardly making any money. He has a stable job, and he offers her money in marriage. He offers the hitchhiker girl money and stability, somewhat stable, as stable as hitchhiking could be, but he like pays for her meals and whatnot, and like gets her a hotel room, stuff like that. And I think it's somewhat implied that
it's a semi-pederast relationship, which I think directly it reminds me of McCarthy, because there are articles that have been written. McCarthy got Me Too'd, okay? I believe after his divorce, he was in a relationship with an underage girl who recently Me Too'd him. Whether or not you believe the claims, there are multiple instances of some very messed up sexual relations between characters within McCarthy books, intersexual relations between family members.
2 occasions.
Is there underage? Is there any underage relations within McCarthy novels?
Yeah, it's fairly common in his earlier works, like Outer Dark immediately comes to mind, with incest between brother and sister. I don't want to talk too much about that because it'll derail the conversation, but that gets sort of revised, that incest thing in Stella Maris and the Passenger. But and again, in that as well, it's a 27-year-old brother who has a romantic infatuation that he's trying to keep closed with his 16-year-old sister. It's like
you have to imagine this guy is not what you would say a normal adjusted individual.
I mean,
what was McCarthy's? What are you gonna say?
I'm just thinking. Well, I mean, Outer Dark is essentially was written as a way for him to vent about how much he hated being a father and wanted to kill his son.
So this guy is divorced, messed up.
Yeah,
he's writing almost Greek level tragedy in the American setting of because when is he writing 19 I believe Blood Meridian was 1980 something, but the rest of his books, like, he starts with what, The Orchard Keeper,
56, and then, throughout that period he writes some really weird stuff. The only older stuff of his before Blood Meridian that I could really recommend is kind of The Orchard Keeper and Suttree. The rest is not worth your time unless you want to understand the what kind of guy McCarthy was. But you can you have this this train of sanity that's like coming back to him. Sanity. It's questionable.
I think a lot of these novels take a very disturbed mind to come up with this stuff. Think about Sophocles. Think about the Oedipus complex. What happens to Oedipus? Sophocles and Euripides are both, you would have to imagine, very disturbed individuals that have drives that may not be socially acceptable, but they are able to integrate them into Greek culture. Sophocles, and a lot of it is political, talking about the state of Athens. And this is interesting. McCarthy is able to do the same thing, talking about America. But at a certain point with authors, it becomes less of a critique of the society and the culture that they're in, and more of a critique of the author and the psychology of the author. So you have to imagine that McCarthy was a messed up individual, probably.
Yeah, I mean, most of his books are a critique of like Appalachia and industrialism moving in, and then kind of extrapolate like, okay, this guy's a little odd the further you go. Speaking of an odd character, Anton Chigurh in No Country for Old Men. Again, with killing the two business guys he's with, and then terrorizing a store clerk, which is nearly identical in the book as it is in the movie. In the book, Anton Chigurh is a little bit more talkative.
Yes.
Like when he pulls out the coins and whatnot, that whole scene, he like kind of like rants and raves a little bit more about like how cool coins are.
Yeah.
Like it's like you can see why it was trimmed down in the movie, because what made that scene so iconic is he didn't say how like the copper in the coins is nice. You can put underwater and hook up wires and produce electricity. You know, you don't have to have that shit.
He doesn't get scientific about it.
Yeah, he doesn't. He doesn't go too far in the movie. Whereas in the book, it's like you have all this momentum, which like it peaks and then it kind of like trails down, and then it moves on to whatever Bell and what he's doing, trying to figure out why.
Which it seems like McCarthy has a tendency to do that,
To add on weird details that kind of like disrupt the story.
Which he has a finger on the pulse of America and culture, which we were just talking about before we started recording, of like Llewellyn dating underage girls or being sexually sort of infatuated with underage girls. That is something that is present around here with rodeo people.
He's a rodeo guy.
He's a rodeo guy.
If you've been to a rodeo, you've met a Llewellyn.
I mean, it's
Llewellyn's
common within everybody around the country, of course, but it's like very around here. I mean, it's based in Texas, right?
Yeah.
We're in Kansas. We're very close to Texas, so we've met people that are like this, and it's sort of disturbing and scary to read somebody that is able to accurately describe almost people like people that you've met. Mm-hmm. Which is, I mean, it is incredible to be part of, to read an incredible author like that and actually understand the culture, because with a lot of books you have to sort of deconstruct the culture secondhand. Like Greek culture, we're so far removed from them, you can get a very good grasp on what that culture was like, but it's almost impossible to separate the narrative of of what we have societally and our ideas and our idea of morality from how we read the book. Whereas there's none of that sort of mediation between reading McCarthy, so you understand, unless you're from Europe or something. There's a lot of viewers from Europe, so maybe you don't understand some of it. But anybody who's read McCarthy and is from the U.S., especially the Midwest area,
Appalachia, especially his older works, is so detailed. I mean, any book that takes place in one specific region of America, or even Mexico, he lived in Appalachia, grew up all of his life there, and then moved to the West, and of course visited Mexico and Europe. Anywhere he talks about, any people group he talks about, he makes them people.
Yeah.
They're all, it makes every single character incredibly human if he focuses on them as a character. Unless, like, they're getting killed within, like, a page of them being introduced. Even then,
but a very deep insight to areas of human life that, in the same way Dostoevsky is able to, like, show you psychology, that's almost a little uncomfortable. When you look at it, you're like I know this exists, but it's hard to look at in some certain cases.
McCarthy does that with culture.
Yeah.
Even like to like smaller like towns or regions of America or Mexico or the West. He does a great job of portraying that in a way that it's like, okay, this guy definitely lived here. He knows what he's talking about.
Yes.
So, getting back to No Country for Old Men, Let's see, we kind of gone over Sugar and him tracking Llewellyn, and Belle trying to figure out what's going on. He contacts Carla Jean and talks with her, gives her it's classic in the movie, and it's the same in the book as far as I remember, of never nothing certain. That speech with,
The battle between man and steer.
Yeah. So, and again, you have that sort of nature versus humanity analogy in that, which is sort of the what Sugar is portrayed as is a force of nature versus Llewellyn, who is very human.
Right.
I think that's fantastic symbolism, which is somewhat. It's this overarching theme throughout the book that Sugar, and especially in the movie, is a force of nature, and you believe it up until like the last minute of the movie. It's like this guy's a force of nature until
he gets hit by a car.
He gets hit by a car, and he's shown to be just as human as anyone else. Which great subversion. Ryan Johnson could never do this.
It's funny watching the movie No Country for Old Men with your friends, and always seeing the reaction to the ending, because what you're used to is a Western, right? You have white hats and black hats, and at the end, the white hat is gonna win, right? In this case, nobody wins.
Llewellyn, the guy with the white hat, literally dies off screen, and then the sheriff, who you expect him to come in and have a standoff with Sugar. I mean, he travels across the states to or no, it's all in Texas, I think. So he travels to where Llewellyn was killed and comes within. It's debatable whether or not Sugar was actually there or not in the hotel, because he definitely been there after Llewellyn was dead, and there was a crime scene. But Belle is always like an hour late. He's like just barely late. He
which is very
just
symbolic because he's a boomer.
Yeah.
he's the older generation that is trying to keep up with the societal changes within his culture, like that conversation between him and the other sheriff of that county, where they're talking about the dismal tide and
bones in the noses and green hair.
Yeah.
Which is, again, a conversation I have literally heard on multiple occasions. Again, Cormac writes real people.
It's actual people. Yeah. And he carries a 1911 too, which is just perfect. It's a Kimber, right?
Yeah, probably. No, it was a modified GI.
Oh, okay.
Bob Hammer. But yeah, probably this guy would love Wilson Combat. Kid Hackathorn and this guy would be best buds.
Europeans have no idea what's going on.
The European mind could not fathom how awesome it is to own guns. So
I've been getting people moral fagging me over having guns.
So, cry about it.
Hey, we live in the Midwest, all right?
We have to do cartels.
You're actually a good person if you have a gun around here. Yeah. So, all right, if you believe in the Nietzschean sense of morality, and if you don't believe in any kind of objective sense, that's another matter. But perspectively, in the Midwest, you're actually a very good person if you own a gun.
If you see a guy walking around with a Cold Steel Action Army and a bullet belt slung around his waist, he's probably a good person.
Yeah, that's a trustable, actually, maybe not a reliable guy.
Probably not reliable, but he probably has good intentions.
Yeah. He's honest, he's a straight up guy.
You could sit down with him and talk about how bad it is that people have green hair and bones in their noses.
Exactly.
So they have that conversation in the diner, and Belle, he's always one step behind, both in his pursuits of justice and in his ability to keep up with the times. And he realizes that by the end, when he can't find Sugar, he never sees the man. Like
yeah, he only sees the remnants.
Yeah,
like
the shadow on the TV.
Yes.
Essentially, the milk left out on the
Right.
counter.
A man just drank milk here.
Yeah. What are you gonna do about it? Yeah, you can't keep up with it, and that's kind of how the movie ends. Is for Bell is realizing I can't keep up with the way criminality has progressed to, and he has that conversation with his great uncle or uncle.
No, it's just, I think it was his cousin. Yeah.
Yeah, his cousin, where he has that conversation, which is good advice. You're not a fucking hero. You're a human being. You can't keep up with it. All you can do is try to put a tourniquet on things. Fantastic conversation. Great moral of the story. And that's kind of how his story ends, is just realizing that...
I think what it also shows, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what it also shows is that humanity doesn't actually change. And it has the appearance of changing based off of what's going on in the circumstance with new technology and different changing times.
Yeah.
But what he brings up is that what you're dealing with is nothing new.
Yeah.
Remember the Comanche pulling up to their what was it, their grandparents?
Their great uncle Clyde or something.
Yeah, great uncle Clyde got shot by Apache
on his front porch.
on his front porch,
And they just watched him bleed to death.
and this was probably something that actually would happen.
This is literally the kind of thing that you read about all the time in the West from 1890. You know, when the West was settled. Just people random acts of violence is nothing new, and that's something that Sheriff Bell, being this again Andy Griffith-esque character, sort of has this perspective that that's just the way things have always been. Is you could just be a sheriff that doesn't carry a gun and doesn't have to deal with violence. You don't have insane crimes. This is a new thing. It's not.
It's always been, and just the way that it happens is evolves and changes. But of course, it's understandable what Sheriff Bell is going through, seeing like the raid at the hotel, that whole incident between Sugar and Llewellyn when Sugar is trying to kill Llewellyn. The clerk gets killed. People in the street are getting killed. It's a bloodbath, in our fine Texas towns.
Yeah.
How is this happening?
Which is it's a very funny thing to think, considering how Texas was founded. Was going into random people's houses or teepees or settlements and indiscriminately killing everyone there so you could take their land. So I don't mean to get like geopolitical or anything, but that's kind of the American story, is indiscriminate violence. So that's what Sheriff Bell sees in what you expect to see, a civilized society, and he quits his job after that and has this weird description of a dream, which we can get to. But
what do you think about the dream sequence at the end? The not sequence, but the retelling of the dream of him going and finding his father.
It's they're back in the old times, and if you've read The Road, it's sort of a main theme is to carry the fire, and that's it's passing on the morality or the wisdom of the older generation to the new generation, and I think that's what the dream means. Is his father had a torch like they carried in the old days when they weren't able to start fires very easily. They didn't have flint and steel or matches, so they'd make a fire. They'd put it in a ram's horn or something like that, and they would keep the embers burning, and they continuously feed it over and over and over again as they traveled, so they could start a fire. Because if you didn't, you would die. So in this dream, that's exactly what they're doing. So he's I don't know.
So the horn is a symbolism for moral codes.
Yes, I think that's what it symbolizes, and he passes his dad in the dream passes the torch to him, and he goes on ahead, He says they knew he'd be waiting for me there, which I think is, like, yeah, Bell has to carry the torch, till he goes on to his dad, till he dies, essentially, or something like that. I don't know what the whole, I lost some money in town that my dad gave me. I don't know what that's about.
Lost some money in town?
Yeah, he said his dad gave him some money and he lost it.
It reminds me of the prodigal son in a way, of like we've squandered the inheritance that we've gotten from the previous generation, which we sort of idolize in a way of having things figured out and progressing through time, things just sort of degrading. That would be my guess, just off face value. I don't know.
Or we've lost the money, right? The value. We've lost the. Maybe that's a symbol of knowledge that things have always been kind of rowdy and violent. You've always had to do violent things in order to secure peace or something like that.
Or it could be a critique on economics and inflation.
That could
probably
be.
not. That's a bit of a reach.
If we're going back to the whole, this is set in the 80s, right, during Reagan's administration.
That's true.
You consider how, that could be an allegory for Reaganomics and how Reagan's generation kind of like squandered the wealth that they inherited from winning World War II. Their parents winning World War II. Maybe that's what that's about. Probably not though. It's sort of questionable what the dreams are about, especially the money thing. I have no clue on that. But yeah, again, you can't fight it. It's sort of like Dutch van Vandelen's speech in Red Dead 1. You can't fight nature.
Yeah,
you can't fight gravity.
It's things naturally degrade.
Yeah.
And society naturally degrades. The farther removed from the original, it's bound to degrade. But this is kind of getting into some what would you call it? There's a political theorist, I forget his name, that talks about this, about just degradation, but we label it progress. As far as, but you can track this kind of thing within societies. The farther away you get away from traditional values, and the more ironic things become within a society. We start sort of taking what we used to hold as values less and less seriously. You know that you're in for a collapse at a certain point, but it's sort of a take. No Country for Old Men seems to be referencing the degradation of society and crime, but it's also just a psychological take on somebody experiencing some, the Andy Griffith experiencing the real world in a way.
Yeah.
But that's No Country for Old Men, and that's Cormac McCarthy.